Hello, everyone. Good to see you. Come and sit down. It's great to be here. Welcome to the flagship session, What Next for Kids, where we're hoping to draw together current thinking about the issues and challenges facing our children and how that impacts on the content we all produce. It's been 3 long years since CMC was last here face-to-face, and it's brilliant to be back. We've got a wonderful room full of producers, content makers, and all those interested in things associated with kids' content. The past couple of years have been tricky for all of us, to say the least, with COVID and now the war in Ukraine, climate crisis, recession, and families facing real poverty. So whilst you're here and before we get the session going, I wanted to take advantage and ask a couple of questions, which might help us lead us through the session. So just a quick hands up. How many of you out there feel that your work life has changed significantly or permanently in the last 2 years? Oh God, pretty much everyone. And then thinking about kids, as producers of content for kids, do you feel kids' lives have changed significantly? Quite a lot of hands there. That's really interesting, and I think something we'll come back to during this discussion. But to get us started with thinking about what kids and young people are going through, I want to introduce an amazing young woman, a change maker, who's going to kickstart our session today. She's just finished her GCSEs, and she can tell us what matters to kids, and maybe we can take away what we should be thinking as producers. Recipient of the Diana Award 2021, award-winning speaker and presenter, and today our change maker for CMC 2020. Put your hands together and welcome Vanessa Sam.
Imagine what it's like to be a child in the 21st century. At the age of 12 years old, China began to put Muslims in concentration camps. And since, the numbers have grown. This has been the largest detention center since the Holocaust. At the age of 13 years old, the Amazon rainforest that we studied in geography class was seen burning in wildfire due to our actions towards agriculture and deforestation. At the age of 14 years old, you witness a crime scene and go on to grieve the loss of a pupil who was killed on a Friday morning school run. 74.4% of homicides were from a knife or sharp implements. Hello everyone, my name is Inspiring Vanessa. I'm a speaker, presenter, and actress, and I'm also 15 years old. Which means a lot of the things that I've just mentioned have been a pivotal aspect of my own life and kids globally. And my intention here is not to bring you down memory lane, because I'm sure we don't want to relive that. But the thing I'm trying to highlight to all of you is that kids from age 12 to 15 have experienced more global events in their lifetime than a person with a 30-year-old lifespan. The things that I've just mentioned, I'm only merely touching the surface of. I haven't even mentioned everything that's happened annually, and it should not be like this. But yet, we continue to discover the evil in this world that plagues the childhood of billions of children. So how do we even begin to tackle the question, what next? What's next for this generation? What does this generation need? What does this generation want? Now, I just want to just put a disclaimer out here. I am a teenager. I'm only one voice out of so many. I hope that I can offer some of my perspective to represent other perspectives. So, I would like to say one thing, and I think it's kind of elephant in the room. I think we can all agree that ignorance is bliss. The question that says, well, if we're trying to shape children's media for children who have experienced so much in this world already, do we not decide to blind them or protect them from the things that are happening in this world? Do we make them ignorant towards it, or do we make them aware of the things that are happening? Now, every time I turn on my television, I'm not going to want to know everything that's happening in the world. I don't want to know all the negatives. But then at the same time, I would like to educate myself. I love reading fictional books because I love the idea of escapism. Then at the same time, I love media that portrays our lives and the lives that we already live. So I want you to ask yourself, do you consume the media for escapism, or do you consume it to portray the lives that we already live and to immerse yourself in the world that we are already in? Now, for children's media, it's tricky because our opinions fluctuate. We are humans at the end of the day. So something that I want may completely differ to another child's perspective or opinion, which means I think moving forward, we must have a balance. There needs to be a place where kids can tune in to learn about the world around them and to also escape from this world. There's something so nice thinking that I could be a fairy in my dreams. But at the same time, I do want to remind myself that this is the place I'm in now and this is what I can do. I think it's so important that we choose not to ignore what children have been through. Topics like mental health, stress, social pressure, all of these topics are so important to continuously be bringing up in the media. Because somebody who is ignored is therefore not heard. And we want to acknowledge and hear every single child's opinion. So to tackle the question, what next for kids? I think there's, many steps, but I'll break it down into two. The first one is that we must reflect to detect. And I made that up myself, so I'm just going to give myself a little pat on the back. So I'll repeat that one more time. But we must reflect to detect. And I'm just going to break this down. But what this means is that we must reflect every single opinion, every ethnicity, every race, every religion, every sexual orientation, wherever it is, we must be representing every single identity. And once we reflect everyone, then we can detect what we're missing out on. And this also means representation behind closed doors. And I think I also forget a lot that when I say we need to have inclusion on screen or in books, but the most important thing is to have it behind the scenes, in those boardrooms. Because we cannot share our own experiences to other people if it's not true to ourselves. You cannot showcase a storyline where somebody is not amplifying the authenticity of that storyline. So we must have that diversity, that inclusion, that identity in the boardrooms. And the second step, which I think we've heard loads of times, which is to repeatedly open up the conversation. Keep the discussion going, which is why conferences like CMC are so important and fundamental to us moving forward in the media. Opening up discussions is the start of collaboration. And I think if you want to know what kids want, you need to ask kids. And that doesn't mean to let a 9-year-old take over your job, even though kids having a little meeting does seem like a pretty cool idea. But it just means to listen to everyone. A kid should not feel unheard because of their age. Their age should not be a limitation to what they can do, because a lot of the things that are happening right now are from adults. I'll admit that. I'm just gonna, defend myself here. But there is so much that we can learn from the younger generation, and there's so much we can learn from children. So we must start opening up our ears. Well, they're already open, which means you've got no excuse to be listening. But we need to continuously be discussing these topics. Topics such as the Black Lives Matter protests in 2020. There was a massive spark in the media, but then it's kind of diffused out. So things just like that must keep going and must be repeated. We must have to continuously keep speaking about different things, otherwise we'll keep moving into the past. And considering the current climates in the world right now, we are going back in time. History just continues to repeat itself. So us, as the people who form the media, we must be the ones to take those steps forward. So, Imagine being a child in the 21st century. At the age of 16 years old, they can finally start to see the world make a change. I've been inspiring Vanessa. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. That really was inspiring and a lot for us to take on board as we move into this session. Thank you very much indeed. So on our panel today, we have Lucy Murphy, Director of Kids Content at Sky, Jill Murphy, Editor-in-Chief of Common Sense Media, who's come straight from America to here, Professor Dr. Ger Grouse, Global Education Advisor, well known for Kidzania, the interactive city for kids, which is amazing, and Anna Bassi, a woman with a finger on the pulse of what makes kids tick. She's the Editor-in-Chief of the utterly brilliant The Week Junior. So we're going to start with Lucy. We've all said we're going to interrupt each other, so let's do that. First of all, Lucy, let's start with a broader question. What responsibilities do we all have as makers of children's content? Are we here to entertain or educate? And where do we draw the line between education and entertainment? And do the responsibilities differ?
I think we're here to do both, and there's a balance involved, and there's a way of doing it. So if, I feel my job is to be very clearly to entertain and inspire and delight our audience, and the things that we commission or that we buy should do those things. But we've also got to look at, within our demographic, there are very different needs and requirements of, huge difference between a 2-year-old and an 11-year-old. And if we want to sort of continue to develop a generation of passionate, articulate, involved kids, like we've just seen. I'm not calling you a kid, but my audience is kids. But, Vanessa has just demonstrated kids are very involved and interested in the world. And we need to give them the tools and the shows that are going to inspire them and encourage them.
Yeah. And I think one of the things we talked about before is it's also about knowing your audience really well, which all of us involved in kids media do. But there's a big difference between what's happening on social media and then what's happening in television as well, isn't there?
There is, and I think there's a huge shift. Obviously, we've been through a pretty funky few years, and a lot has changed for us. We've all just put our hands up and said, yes, our lives have changed. Kids' lives have changed, but actually, we know that there is an awful lot of children going to school who aren't school ready. I'm sure a lot of your research points that out. There's also been a complete kind of engagement with education that parents have had to do because they've homeschooled. So they're very aware of the media their children are consuming in a way they might not have been before the pandemic, and that's actually fantastic because they're really engaged and demanding of shows. Again, whether you're wanting to squash onto the sofa on a Saturday night and watch something together as a family, or whether you're wanting to find a show that is going to help your child's anxiety, or as Vanessa said, kids are very interested in learning about the world. So finding those shows that do all of those things is our collective responsibility.
And so sort of building on that, do you think the role of broadcasters now is about balance and detachment? Is that still essential, part of the mix, or it should be veering more towards sort of commitment, engagement as a priority? Where do you think we sit?
I don't think detachment is ever something. I'm not good at being detached. Anyone who knows me probably, I'd want to get my hands dirty, and actually everybody here needs to get their hands dirty. And my job is dealing with 3 very distinct communities. There's the community of children that make up our audience. There's the community of adults that are their parents and carers. And there's the community of talent and creatives and producers that are here. And we need to sort of have that dialogue constantly and be very engaged, because the audience doesn't stand still, because life doesn't stand still. So we have to just keep sort of refreshing ourselves. And if we're making a show for and we say it's for a 7-year-old, we need to talk to 7-year-olds. And we need to understand what the parents of 7-year-olds are exercised about or anxious about, which is why at Sky, you'll hear it a lot this week, and it's really true. We do things through that lens of, will kids love it? Will parents trust it? And we don't do anything that's one or the other. And whether that's finding a new way to educate, I would rather use the word inspire, because we're not an educational broadcaster, but we can work with someone like MC Grammar to find a really immersive and interactive way to get kids learning about the Tudors or space. Or whether it's about our sort of weekly news show, which is filming right now in Osterley, and a new script. The last one got torn up last night. Thank you, Rishi. Thank you, Sajid. And we put kids at the heart of that show because it's really important that they have a voice and that they can, the presenters that present our weekly news show are, as you know, you must get so many letters a week. They're really interested in so many things, and we want them to challenge us to tell the stories they want to hear.
At which point, as the winner of a Broadcast Digital Award last night, well done, Sky.
Yes.
Incredibly, well done. Best children's content. Should we play a little bit of a sizzle and show everybody
please,
what we're talking about?
This is Destiny, and her family is complicated. There's her amazing mum, and there's her superstar dad, Danny. One tiny problem, though, he doesn't know she exists.
Seriously, who are you?
I'm your sister. To truly understand why Ukraine has been invaded by Russia, we need to hit the history books and go back in time. From 1917, when the royal Russian family were overthrown, until 1991, we saw the rise and the fall of the Soviet Union, or the USSR. Ukraine was one of the 15 states that made up this giant country.
Our planet needs saving. Are you listening?
This city is sinking. Could there be a more shocking sight than this? A mosque now submerged under the rising waters.
From your mouth to your esophagus. Do you know what happens next? Of course I do. Follow me. That's why they call me the food dude. Here to tell you where I'm out for. Goes after you chew. Really, can you tell me how it gets into my belly and what makes it so messy and my tongue is smelly? The answer to your question comes down to digestion. This song is your lesson, so you must pay attention. I promise I will listen. Wicked, cause it is a system consisting of your organs. Here's a tour from start to finish. Rush it, rush it, rush it.
Lucy Grammar, who has done the World Book Day theme song. Thank you very much for that, Lucy.
Pleasure.
So just coming out of the pandemic and thinking about, what we've gone through, what has changed, if anything, about how you commission, and what impact do you think it's had? Anything lasting?
I think we all had to do a bit of an about turn very quickly when the first lockdown came about. Everybody was put into a position they'd never been in before and didn't understand. And parents were homeschooling. So we did work really closely with the amazing BBC and brought a lot of their educational programming onto the Sky platform. We also acquired some and commissioned, and then that fulfilled an immediate need. And then as time has gone on and things have changed, then we've sort of continued to look for shows that are reflecting those sort of audience wants and desires, and also the sort of parental concerns, and working with sort of new talent quite often. So, we also know that parents are sort of dealing with a situation where their children are in places they haven't experienced themselves. So, the metaverse and cloud-based gaming and all of the social media that, children have access to so much. They're more connected than ever in the world, and they're less connected in a physical way. So we've had to create programming that really answers to that, and actually that's exciting. It offers us opportunities to try new things and to take risks and to come up with formats and genres that are maybe haven't been done before, in ways that haven't been done before.
That's great, thank you. And I think that leads on really well to Jill, who will explain what Common Sense Media is, but that the thing for parents about discovery and how to make choices and for children to know what to choose as well. So Jill.
Well, I want to just mention that I think Lucy just hit the nail on the head when it comes to what parents were dealing with during the pandemic, which was, we all felt schizophrenic. We started the pandemic with iPads and we're ending it with the metaverse. And it just feels overwhelming. And Common Sense Media sits squarely in the middle of parents, kids, and industry. So industry being all the platforms that distribute this content, the content everyone in this room is creating. And it's been overwhelming. And it felt like one more thing for us to do. And many of us, at least in my household, I have 2 girls, they're 9 and 12, and to see what they were watching was horrifying. I mean, I should know better, but we'll just pretend that I'm a regular parent, because I am. I just play the editor-in-chief on TV. And I was mortified to see some of the stuff that they were consuming or what they were getting exposed to. And then, you know, after some of that softening, we started to see some of the quality content that can come through. So this all comes down to an overabundance of content that's available and really helping parents first, from our perspective, and kids find and discover some of the quality that's out there. And that can be short-form content, it can be scripted content, but with the abundance that's there, really curating, whether that's from a platform perspective or a personal perspective, and finding what's quality is extremely important.
And should we play the sizzle to explain a little bit more about Common Sense Media?
Sure.
Thank you.
Media and technology are at the very center of children's lives. Millions of parents worldwide depend on Common Sense Media to find content that's best suited to their family's unique needs. We have the world's largest and fastest growing library of independent, age-based ratings and reviews for everything families want to watch, read, play, and learn. Our research-backed approach is based on childhood development guidelines and gives parents detailed insights and context into what content families will find. Our partners deliver Common Sense Media reviews and advice to millions of households. Through integrations with top TV providers, streaming devices, and online retail, we help parents choose the right content for their families. We're your trusted partner for quality, age-appropriate media recommendations that families have come to rely on. In fact, 87% of UK parents want their TV provider to deliver age-relevant recommendations, and 92% of our users say they would find our Parents' Guide valuable if it were directly available in streaming TV platforms. Common Sense Media is committed to ensuring digital well-being for all children. And together with partners across the globe, we empower families to make the best possible choices for children.
So that gives a bit of a taste of what Common Sense Media does, and your helping hand, the sort of trusted guide. So what impact did the pandemic have on Common Sense Media in the US?
Well, maybe one of the only silver linings from the pandemic is that our traffic went through the roof. But that was really indicative of families looking for something to watch together, because we live in a culture now where everyone's on their individual screens, they're in their own rooms, and so parents were looking to just kind of peel kids off of these individual screens where they were either doing school or watching whatever they wanted to watch. And that family movie night concept, it really skyrocketed for us, and it's continued to have this stable, we've become this stable resource for everyone on that subject. So really looking for something that families can watch together, but that crosses generations. It appeals to younger kids, that keeps your partner off their phone, in my case anyway, that will keep that tween interested and engaged. It's interesting enough for the adult in the room. That's really core to what we do. And it's been an area that we've been able to really serve users.
And what sort of shows did particularly well?
It's different by family. And no family wants to keep watching the same type of movie. My family keeps on going back to Marvel, and I'm like, it's time to switch it up. But more often than not, nostalgia plays really well, especially once you involve parents that are really engaged and excited to watch something. And then you start to let your guard down a little bit more. I mean, our ratings and reviews are based on age appropriateness, but I think when you're in the room and you are doing that co-viewing, you're more comfortable letting your guard down, especially with something you may have seen when you were younger, to really share that experience and engage in conversation around a movie or a TV show. So that's been certainly an area that's played well. So we have lots of curation around 80s films, 90s films, and then everything that's old is new again. So old series have become really popular. And then the remakes, so watching the originals versus the remakes has also become commonplace for sure.
I think the mistake I made was Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which I had forgotten quite. Yeah.
We all have one.
Yeah.
We all have one.
I was like, ooh, they loved it, but I was like, shit.
Those 80s movies, the 80s movies are tricky.
Yeah.
I'm sure they did love it. You might have been horrified.
I was pretty horrified, but it was funny. So how does that sort of learning impact on what Common Sense Media does next?
I think as cultural awareness evolves and we're really looking to make changes in the way that what we're evaluating, because global is here, right? Because of streaming and thanks to streaming, we're able to cover a much wider swath of content. It gives audiences access to all different types of content and cultures. We want to make sure that we're evaluating from the current climate. We're looking at diversity, equity, inclusion. We added that element into our ratings after we did a lot of research around how to evaluate from that lens. And by the way, that doesn't mean just evaluating the content from that lens, but making sure that we have a wide variety of reviewers doing that work as well. So we really started that work from the inside out. Mental health is an issue that we're looking at. We're really looking for content that deals with that subject. We don't only review movies and TV, we review books and games and websites. So books is an area that is riddled with content around mental health. So we're seeing a lot of that come to life on the screen. And again, global. So we're launching Spanish language ratings later this year. We prioritize UK content. We really focus on kids and family. We just want to be everywhere that the questions are popping up for families.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, isn't it? Because the Dubbit research that was done for CMC, one of the things that came up, I don't know if people have read it, you should look at the report on the website, but children don't necessarily differentiate. They don't really know what television is anymore because streaming's, you know, how they consume their content is very different. And so it's really interesting that you're doing games as well. And I think we'll come back to both mental health and diversity. It's something, obviously, Vanessa brought up, something, you know, critical to all of us, but particularly something this age group talk about quite a lot. But I suppose the kind of question, and it might sort of flip with Lucy as well, you know, what about educational content? You know, what are we left with, you know, once you've done all the ratings and sort of curation, how important do you see it for parents?
I think for families, they think of educational content as the younger set. So for preschool content, it matters a ton. I think it can get lost in older kids' content, and I'm speaking about that 9 to 12 space where there's so much great stuff, but it can be harder to find. But then we have people like Vanessa or these content creators that they are creating educational content in short form that's digestible, that we just need to kind of relook at how we're defining educational content too, especially for older kids.
Yeah. I think that's a good point, and it's something as well that age group are very used to very high-end scripted content from the Netflixes and so forth, and it sort of makes a bit of a bar, you know, what they're actually watching and then what we as parents might want them to watch.
It's aged down dramatically, and there's a significant leap from YouTube Kids or 8 and under up to shows that are really targeting, 14 and 15-year-olds are appropriate for that age, but are appealing to 8, 9, and 10.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Gail, let me bring you in now. From an educational point of view, I know you're not just education, how do we get this balance right when we think about the content we as content creators are producing?
Wow. I just wanted to talk about children, and then I think we'll come to the content bit, because I think sometimes we do it the wrong way around, right? So one of the things I'd like the audience to do is to have, this is going to be tricky for some of you, is to have your favorite child in your head now. If you've got two, then you can have both. You do that fairness bit. Oh my God, how do I decide? But just for the next kind of 5 minutes, just have them in your head, right? And I'm just going to pose a few things. So one of the first questions I think, Emma, you asked was, is the content educational or entertainment? And the or always makes me a little bit sad. Yeah? I don't know why we can't do both. Then the next thing is I think we need to, and it's kind of developed over time, I think we need to distinguish between schooling and education. Schooling is the bit where I'll tell you something, and then I'll test you whether you've listened. And then on the 25th of August, you can get your GCSE certificate. Can't you, Vanessa? Yeah? And so that's one thing. Education is everything, I think, and it is what we do with it. So the issue is almost like, what do we want, how do we want the children to see it? That's just as an observation. Then I'm listening, as I do, metaverse and iPads, and it brings to me the question, which child are we talking about here? Because in this city of Sheffield, at the start of the pandemic, there were schools where 35% of the children did not have internet access at home. So which child did we have in mind? Yeah? And it's very easily glossed over. Have you noticed politically, that's completely gone. So here's a proposal. I think we should have a windfall tax on all the telecommunications companies, and instead of giving the money God knows where, we're going to make an infrastructure so that every child has internet access at home, right? And then we have a level-ish playing field. Because those things matter, because the danger is, and I think the pandemic has shown this, if we're not very careful, actually the gap between have and have not, equaling the gap between can and cannot, will grow. Right? And in a couple of years' time, we're all going to go, oh my God, what's happened here? So we need to be mindful of that. I think we need to build the content around our children, and we mustn't forget to laugh. Can we have a bit of comedy in there sometimes? Because it gets a bit like last night when I watched the Resignations. That was a laugh, wasn't it? so can we have used versions of that? That would be quite cool. We did some global research at Kidzania. Kidzania Cities for Children, age 4 to 14, youngsters on their own, independent learning, choose jobs that they can do, from pilot to surgeon to window cleaner, you name it. About 25 globally, and there's 60 activities or jobs per center. So very quickly, what we did, when you come to Kidzania as a child, you have a bracelet so that we can track where you are. We can therefore also see what your choices have been. So my question to the analysts was, globally, sample 600,000, on the first school visit, what's the first choice? So we had the whole list, and then my question became, are they boys, girls, are they 4, are they 14, are they black, are they white, are they rich, are they poor, are they urban, are they rural, and which country are they from? Findings, all stereotypes are set at the age of 4. Almost no change between 4 and 14. Regardless of their background, all girls globally choose activities below their age range. 9-year-old girls do 7-year-old activities. Children can only aspire to what they know exists. Poor children clean windows. Posh children perform liver transplants. Okay? And then globally, there's almost no difference. The difference between the countries was statistically insignificant. And I think there's an issue of the globalization of growing up. Peppa Pig in 20 languages, everybody watches YouTube, and all the shopping malls look the same. And I think we need to ask ourselves, around knowing our children better, we need to build content around that. So I would, for example, advocate that we need to localize some of our content. And there's a brilliant book called A Brilliant Orange by David Winner. It's about Dutch football. And, but it's also about much more. It's a really good read. And one of the quotes in there is, if you give a Dutch child a piece of paper and a pencil, and you ask the child to draw the horizon, he or she will draw a straight line. If you give a child from Sheffield a piece of paper and a pencil, they will draw hills. Yeah? And in a sense, I think content creation needs to reflect this. Who are we? And how do we fit into that bigger picture, rather than just present those things? And I mean, I grew up in the south of Holland many years ago. I grew up with the BBC and ITV. That's how I learned my English. I moved to England and I spoke like Hilda Ogden. I did. I'm sad that TV has lost some of that role, and I would urge it very hard to try and get that back. I know there are all sorts of other media now, but for me that was important. And then I think schools are tasked with all the ills of society. And in my wife's school, they have a mantra that every child is everyone's responsibility. And when we create content and we think about content, we need to think about the children. And we need to think about who they are, what they are, and what they're struggling with. And one of the things they're struggling with, I know from my daughter, my youngest daughter, is the concept of truth. It's about values, and it's about integrity. And I'm afraid actually I think it's brilliant. You in this world of media are going to need to lead from the front. Because at the moment, nobody else is, right? And it does matter that our children are not taught what it is, but that they are presented with the experiences to find out for themselves. They need to fall over and learn how to get up. All those things. So I haven't given you a clue about content, but I talked about children because I think the content needs to be created around the youngsters. It needs to be moulded.
But you saying that, Get, does that mean you think there is no content that fulfills those criteria that you...
No, it's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, I think at the moment it does that, but by stealth. I think we need to be more mindful of who our children are. We don't know our kids. Schools are not encouraged to know their children. Right?
True.
Because we judge them by how well they attend, how well they behave, and what grades they get. So I do work with a company called the Insights Family, who have live access to thousands of youngsters and families all over the world. And the feed I get from that is much more important to me than knowing that you're going to get an A star or whatever it's called in modern money. And so I'm not saying that the content doesn't do that. I think we need to reshape it slightly, reform it. And make them journeys of discovery and have a laugh. And we must have a laugh, right?
And I can see Anna nodding away, and as somebody who liaises with kids on a weekly basis and writes about issues of importance to kids, what do you think?
What do I think? Well, I agree with everything that everybody's said, actually, but especially what Ger has said about knowing the children that we're creating content for. I don't think you can do anything for a child without having a sense of what their world looks like. I think the last few years, we've all had a really tough couple of years, and children have been going through the same experience as us. It's been a really unifying experience, I think. They have been fearful, we have been fearful. They've been stuck at home, we've been stuck at home. We've had a shared experience. I think the world has been, I think it always has been, unsettling and uncertain, but it feels as though that's accelerated over the past couple of years, and we're certainly hearing that from our readers. We pride ourselves on having a very close relationship with our readers and their families, going back to what Lucy was saying about creating content for children that children love, but their parents trust as well. And I think the Week Junior is a current affairs magazine for children, and I think as such we are entrusted with the responsibility of explaining the world to our readers. That the parents who pay for the magazine trust us to do that. So we've conducted formal research. We get a lot of anecdotal information from readers and their families as well. So we know that, of course, kids are very nervous still about the pandemic, that the war in Ukraine really concerns them, and obviously the climate crisis is the subject that's on everybody's lips at the moment. But the flip side to that is they're still just kids, and they're still having problems in the playground. They're still struggling with friendships. They might be being bullied at school. They could be feeling lonely. And also, as Ger was saying, they need to have fun. I was telling Emma earlier, I went to see Thor: Love and Thunder last night at the cinema, and I have to say it reminded me of how important it is just to be silly, and how much children really need to see things that are funny and silly, and just for the sake of it, escapism. It's just you can't. I pride myself as a sort of the editor of the Week Junior in being able to explain really complex topics to children, and there is an educational element to that, of course. But we also have a duty to entertain them, and we try to do that through the magazine as well. So it's not just about war, it's also about fossilised poo, or it might be about the oldest pair of false teeth ever found. You know, there's space for all of this, and I think we've just got to get the balance right.
I suppose, if I may, just really quickly, I think it's a really important point, and knowing the children is about not necessarily listening to the messages we're given by government or by others. So the catch-up bit, you've all heard about the catch-up bit, they're falling behind and we must test them more and they need to come to school on a Saturday night and all those things, right? One of the biggest issues with children at the moment are the younger ones, the COVID-born children. So we know from research that when they go to nursery, they don't know how to play with other children and they're quite fearful of other adults. And they're not confident of playing in big rooms because they've been at home on their own with their mum and dad or whatever, right? So, but we've completely ignored that bit because it's not about catching up GCSE. So knowing the youngsters and what goes on then would create content that aids that.
And I think, you know, preschool TV has always been very good at that. We've always had very embedded social emotional storylines running through preschool programming, which can really help, you know, navigate those playground politics and how to make friends. But, you know, in the sizzle reel that we showed, there was a clip from Little Darlings, which was a drama we made. It's just as important for older children. That was a really entertaining, beautifully produced drama, but it was also about resilience and fitting in and identity and what to do when what you think is your world isn't your world. And all of those, you know, but if we'd set out to make a programme about that, it would be deadly. But it, as a really fantastic drama with brilliant music and, you know, the magic of Jacqueline Wilson, children can learn a lot.
I think the other thing probably to note as well is that children are naturally problem solvers as well. And the other thing that we know about our readers, and I think this is true of all children, is that they want to make things better. They do want to make things better. They're naturally very generous and very kind, and we have to give them opportunities to demonstrate their kindness. We need to show them how to solve problems. But what's really important to me, and I think all of us, again, as you know, producers of content for children, is that we must never, I think, you know, with the sort of Greta Thunberg effect, you know, she's been an amazing, you know, spokesperson, and she's a hero to so many children. But not every child is going to be Greta Thunberg, and they shouldn't be made to feel as though they are. You know, we shouldn't abdicate our responsibility as the adults in the room for solving the world's problems. So I think something we should be very, very aware of is that children do need to feel that they can make a difference, and in fact, helping them to do that, whether it's by explaining that, yes, you can't, of course, you can't do anything much to stop what's happening in Ukraine, but you can show your support, you can donate your toys or your clothes, you can help to raise money for some of the charities that are working there, which is something that we encourage through the magazine in response to feedback from parents. You can help to reduce their anxiety about these things, and you can help give them some agency at a time when there are so many things that can make children feel powerless. It's very important to be able to focus on the small things as well as the big
and
picture.
To give a bit of hope, because the worst thing we can do is to envelop kids in the doom and gloom. We need to give them sort of tools to be resilient and resourceful, but we also need to show that there are, you know, great things.
Yeah, and also it's about showing that there are responsible adults in the room. Going back again to what Ger was saying, I think role models, actually, you know, at the moment, it's the front page of every paper is about the government in crisis and the clown that's kind of running the show at the moment. But what an awful thing for children to be seeing. You know, the adults in the room can't be trusted. We need to actually, this is through drama, and it may have to be, you know, demonstrate that not all adults are like that. There are, you know, adults are in charge in many ways, and there are people who can be trusted, and they are out there in the world doing amazing things to help make the world a better place. So all is not lost.
And I think that's something that the Week Jenny does very, very well. It's almost like the sensible person in the room having that. At which point I've realised we haven't showed the sizzle, apologies, for the Week Junior. So if we can show that, and then we'll come back and chat again.
Week Junior is there to inspire children, it's to teach them what's going on in the world.
articles that make them giggle and laugh. Tearless onions go on sale. Yes, please.
I want to tell my friends so my friends can know what's happening all about the world.
It contextualises the information so they're not scared or worried. It does it child-friendly way. It opens up children's minds because they can find out things they never knew about, like spider silk being used for clothes. No way!
I've definitely been singing the praises of the Week Junior to my fellow school mum friends and telling them all about it.
It is so important that our children learn to explore and, of course, use their imaginations.
And I think that's a really great... that's a really great encapsulation of where we've got to, which is really giving a voice to children, doing it in a sort of ordered, structured way, but also raising those issues up. So diversity and mental health are kind of really major issues for this age group, for all of us. And I just wondered, Jill, Lucy, Ger, Anna, you know, what your thoughts are on how we as content creators should be thinking about these topics and where we should be going.
I will just say, just jumping back to what we were discussing, parents also need those tools and resources. They need to know that these programs exist, that these magazines exist. They're not aware of all of the information that is at their fingertips. And especially as we do look at these meatier topics, that kids are sophisticated. They're much more sophisticated than the parents are in many cases. These topics are very, they feel taboo to the parent, and they may not know how to have a conversation about them. But kids are actively getting all of this language, learning about diversity, equity, and inclusion, learning about mental health. So that is the benefit of having it represented in their programming. It kind of ushers, it bridges it creates a bridging opportunity for a parent and a kid to have an open dialogue about some of these areas.
Right, we're going to move to questions shortly, but before we do, I want a wrap question from each of you. So going to each of you first, how can we as content producers, program makers, bring hope to kids and that's not all doom and gloom going forward? And any advice for the program makers out there? So Lucy, I'll start with you.
I would say start with that intent and really think about your audience and the families and situations they live in, and how is your show going to sort of make their lives better. I don't think any one of us in this room come to work and think, oh, great, let's make a show that's going to make a lot of money. I mean, okay, that might be a nice add-on, but we, I think, have a collective responsibility to create shows that add to children's lives in a really positive way, that give kids tools and resources internally, but also demonstrate to them that they have a voice and a valid opinion, and that there are ways they can use those, whether it's a tiny thing, as you were saying about donating a toy to a Ukraine appeal, or whether it's someone like Vanessa who's made it a kind of big part of her life to go out and be heard.
Anna.
I'd echo what Lucy has said. I think putting the children at the heart of it, remembering that you don't have to separate education and entertainment, that they can be the one and the same thing, remembering that children are curious, and that should be encouraged, that they ask questions, and we should be setting out to try and answer their questions, and we should be encouraging them to ask more questions.
And actually, that's brilliant. The kids' questions are the brilliant ones. You know, why, what, where,
exactly.
who. We should all be asking
They're the best
those
questions. Put yourself in the shoes of a child and then work out what you think they need from you.
Yeah.
Just a couple of things, really. One is, I think, trust the children as much as they trust you. And we don't trust children, do we? Because we don't allow them mobile phones in classrooms. It's an odd world they live in, isn't it? All morning they're on this thing, and then they go into a classroom, and they haven't confiscated if they turn it on, and it's kind of weird, I think. So we need to do that. I would encourage, if you think educational, think activism rather than passive learning. Facts, all right, you know, but so the climate change is a really good example. Climate change is going to go on the curriculum, but as a natural science. So I'll teach you the facts, and then I'll test you. Yeah? I don't let you think what you might want to do about it, either individually or collectively. So I think that's incredibly important. And then I would echo from a personal observation. My granddad's 131 years old tomorrow, and he was a coal miner in the south of Holland and a farmer, and he always wore wooden shoes, clogs, because that's all he could afford. And when I was 8 years old, I wore his clogs and they hurt my feet. But I did stand in his shoes, and I did understand how he lived. So when I saw the 10-year-old Ukrainian girl in the school last week, and I put myself in her shoes, I had no idea how you leave your dog behind and how you come here with nothing. So put yourself in the children's shoes, and sometimes they're pleasant shoes and they go like this. Sometimes they're just not.
Jill?
I would say don't turn the 10-year-olds into 13-year-olds. It's a hard space to create for, but it's such an essential space, those middle years before becoming a teen. It's so vital for kids to feel heard and reflected, and talk about mental health is such a key space for that age range. But we're catapulting them into Stranger Things, or you name it. And there's just so much there that they're not ready to absorb yet.
Thank you. We're going to open up for questions now. I'll start with one which is from online, which is, if all stereotypes are set at age 4, how can we as content creators try to change this? So I'll look at you, Go. What's the answer?
It's really easy. Think and put yourself in their shoes. So Kidzania London had a Formula 1 activity, okay? So 2 members of staff in overalls, kids changing tyres on a Formula E car and learning about electric engines. You were there, weren't you, at the time? And it had 100% boys visiting the activity. So I parked myself on a bench outside the activity for a month. And we changed. 10 o'clock in the morning, 2 male members of staff, 100% boys. 12 o'clock, 1 male member of staff, 1 female member of staff. You could see them walk past and go, hang on a minute, I can go in there. The percentages changed to 80-20. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 female members of staff, the percentages changed to 65-35. It didn't cost the company a penny. Yeah? We just put ourselves in their shoes and we shoveled the staff around a bit. So I think before we talk about more resources, think about what you've got, and back to the role modeling stuff that we did in Becoming Me and all those things.
Hannah? They come to you when they can read, so it's a couple of years later.
Sorry, I missed.
If all the stereotypes are set at 4.
Well, I mean, I think that's a frightening thing to hear, actually, isn't it? And I think what again, the Wheat Junior is for slightly older children. It's for 8 to 14-year-olds, but we have, since the outset, been very careful to make sure that we're not stereotyping on our pages, and in fact sort of anti-stereotyping. So if we might have a feature about ballet, we'll make sure it's a boy who's got the main spot on the page. You know, we try very hard to make sure that every child is included and every child feels represented, and that may not happen in one issue, as it may not happen in one episode of a programme, but over a run of 5 or 6 episodes or magazines, every child should see themselves and their family on those pages or on the screen.
So we have another question, which is, do we have a responsibility to allow children to be children? And how do we build a resilient generation? So it's kind of building on what you said, Jill. I don't know what your top tips, particularly for those between age groups. It's really tough.
It is too hard. I'm going to take the next question. No, I'm building a resilient generation. I mean, kids being able to see themselves reflected in media, I think, is hugely important. So again, that kind of goes back to them feeling heard, feeling seen, feeling motivated. I think the activism thing for education is extremely valuable and important. Never leaving these kids feeling like, oh no, now what do I do? Yeah. I think that's anything that we can develop and put in front of them that, again, reflects that messaging is valuable.
Do you think there's something as well in making sure that children know it's okay to fail as well?
Yeah.
And this is something that Gare and I worked on together a few years ago, a column called Becoming Me, which was completely Gare's idea, and the idea there was to show children that life isn't always a straight line, and successful people haven't just gone up and on this sort of direct trajectory to the position they're in now. And I think that's really important too, that kids know that adults get things wrong and that they're going to get things wrong. It's fine to get things wrong, and you learn and you recover and you get stronger, and so it goes on.
Be a good activity for the audience when you're on your way back tomorrow or whenever it is. In your head or on a piece of paper, draw your line. Because we tell kids that they're straight, don't we?
Yeah, we had some fantastic lines. Some of them were like this, some of them were like this. We spoke to
Well, and now they're
amazing
seeing
people.
it in pictures. So on Pinterest or Instagram, they see the finished product.
Exactly.
This is what wellness looks like. This is what mindfulness looks like. You have to have this kind of water bottle and this morning routine, and and these products, and it all looks just this way.
Yes, because life is messy.
Right.
And actually we do, showing the mess and showing the iterative learning and showing the struggles in a really authentic way is important.
And this one's not about telly, but how important is it that we provide compelling content that isn't reliant on screens and watching? We've talked a lot about the value of TV here, but how important are books, audio, other sources?
Really important.
It all
Very important, I would say.
All starts with reading, doesn't it, Emma?
Well, it all starts with reading, and I think you can't, and I think it's perfectly possible for screens and books and magazines to live side by side. I don't think that one is better than the other, and I think it would be a fool, I'd be a fool to suggest that reading a magazine is better than watching TV. They both have their values, but certainly I think spending time away from screens can be good for anybody because you just engage with the content in a different way.
And
it's just a bit more mindful.
Feeds their imagination. I mean, when a kid can imagine what that story is going to look like, it can become the audience members at this conference years from now, where they're going to want to develop their own stories and can envision it instead of having it all put right in front of them. And then I think we talk a lot at Common Sense Media about knowing your kid, you know them best. So we say reading is, first and foremost, but actually for reluctant readers, magazines are a great place to start because it's short and digestible. But reading. And so many great stories come from that.
Okay.
Maybe that's the future of learning, is that the role of the content is hybrid, is deliberately to steer to other ways of learning. The bit that goes, you've seen this, now read.
And I think, for me, success of a show is it going to end up on the fridge door? Is it going to be a drawing that some child has done? Is it going to be a flyer for an event that features a favourite character? Because those moments where and in fact we're working with the charity WizKids on a trail of 6-foot-high morphs through the City of London next year, which is a fantastic way to get families out together finding all the morphs. It's also a step-free route, so it's very accessible. And those things which, we talk a lot about programs and content, but actually it's about, opening your door to a character that your child loves so that you're going to stay up until 3 a.m. doing a mural of Peppa Pig on the wall because it's their birthday, or how on earth do you make black icing to make a Bing cake? And it's all those things that, learning about families and the way you experience entertainment is not just screen-based.
Yeah, that reminds me of the nightmare every parent gets before World Book Day, and they've got to do it's responsive. We're going to draw to a close now. I have to read something out from Greg Childs, so don't start leaving, because he'll know, even though he's in London.
He's watching.
He's watching, aren't you? I can hear him in my ear. So I want to thank the producers of this session, Arani, Logan and Becky Jones, for doing such an amazing job. Thank you very much. And for more thoughts about education, when CMC's done and dusted, be sure to have a look at the 2 Perspective on Learning videos in the CMC VOD library. They are associated with this session. One is Learning in TikTok and YouTube, and the other on Innovations in Literacy. Next up here is Put Your Money Where Your Mouth Is at 3:30, and the Adelphi Room will host Are Your Ears Burning at the same time. And of course, you've got time to grab a cup of tea or coffee in the foyer. Today, the tea and coffee is sponsored by Aardman, so it'll be funny. I would like to thank our panel, who I think have been absolutely brilliant. So Anna Bassi, Gail Grouse, Jill Murphy and Lucy Murphy, thank you very much for